Love stories are supposed to end with a happy ending. But what happens when the fairy tale turns into a nightmare? Jenny Slatten and Sumit Singh, the couple who once proved their love on 90 Day Fiancé, became a symbol of love conquering all. But behind the cameras and the smiles, a darker truth was unfolding. A secret affair. A $500,000 debt. For the past 6 months, Jenny Slatten had been secretly involved in a romantic relationship with a banker named David. What started as a private affair soon turned into a deep romance. After learning about Jenny's hidden financial troubles, David promised to take full responsibility for paying off her secret debt of $500,000. Their bond grew even stronger after that. They spent several occasions together at five-star hotels, showing how close they had become. A few weeks later, Jenny found out she was pregnant. Medical tests confirmed that the baby she was carrying shared David's DNA. When Sumit Singh discovered the shocking truth, he was heartbroken. Heated arguments followed, and Jenny eventually divorced Sumit. She made her intentions clear and said, "I only want to marry David." Unable to handle the betrayal, Sumit attempted suicide. Later, he accused Jenny of stealing $480,000 of his savings and giving it to David. The case went to court, and after a long hearing, the court found Sumit's claims to be true. Jenny was sentenced to 3 months in prison. This is the untold story of Jenny Slatten, Sumit Singh, and the man who came between them. A story so unbelievable that it feels like fiction, but every twist is painfully real. Life after reality TV is rarely as glamorous as it seems. After 90 Day Fiancé, Jenny and Sumit tried to live quietly in India. They had fought for years to prove their love was real. Against Sumit's parents, against skeptical fans, and against the challenges of age and distance. Jenny, in her early 60s, believed she had finally found peace. Sumit, younger and adjusting to responsibility, worked hard to keep their home running. But under the surface, problems were growing. Jenny missed the excitement of California, the comfort of her old life, and the financial stability she once had. Sumit, though loving and devoted, struggled to provide the lifestyle she wanted. Their laughter was genuine, but real life was harder than the TV show had ever shown. Friends began to notice Jenny's restlessness. She often stayed up late at night, scrolling through her phone, chatting with people online. She said she was keeping in touch with friends back home, but the truth was that she was searching for something more, a spark she felt had disappeared from her marriage. That spark came when she met David, a charming banker introduced to her by a mutual friend. At first, their conversations were innocent. They talked casually about life, money, and the challenges of living abroad. But slowly, Jenny found herself opening up to him more than she did to Sumit. David was everything Sumit wasn't: financially secure, confident, and experienced. He listened without judgment and offered real solutions instead of excuses. For Jenny, who had struggled with money for years, David's presence felt like a lifeline. What started as harmless friendship soon turned into something dangerous. Jenny didn't realize it, but she was standing at the edge of a storm that would change her life forever. To the outside world, Jenny and Sumit still looked like the couple who had beaten all odds. But behind closed doors, Jenny's heart had already started to drift, and Sumit had no idea. Jenny had always been a woman of routine. Her mornings in India began with tea, quiet talks with Sumit, and daily chores. But as months passed, she began to crave something more, a feeling she hadn't experienced in years. That was when David entered her life. David wasn't just another acquaintance. He was a polished, confident banker with the kind of financial stability Jenny had always wanted. Their first meeting was casual, a brief introduction through a friend at a social gathering, but what followed changed everything. At first, their talks were light. Jenny would message him about cultural differences, her life in India, and how much she missed her family in California. David listened patiently and made her feel heard, something she hadn't felt in a long time. Soon, their chats lasted longer and became more personal. What started as a few minutes of polite conversation turned into hours of late-night texting. Jenny would wait until Sumit was asleep, then quietly pick up her phone. Her face glowed in the dim light of the screen. David's words made her feel alive. He spoke with confidence and made her feel safe. He didn't just sympathize, he offered answers. When Jenny mentioned her financial worries, David didn't ignore them. He asked questions and showed real concern. For Jenny, this was new. Sumit loved her, but his love had limits. He couldn't erase her debts or give her the security she needed. David, on the other hand, seemed to hold the key to a better future. Their friendship soon crossed invisible lines. Jenny started dressing differently when she knew she'd see David. She laughed more, and her eyes sparkled in ways Sumit hadn't seen in months. David noticed and told her she was beautiful and deserved more. The first time they met alone, it was supposed to be about her financial issues. But as they sat across from each other in a quiet cafe, something changed. Jenny felt nervous, excited, and alive. From that moment, the affair stopped being emotional. It became physical. Jenny knew she was crossing a line she could never undo. But in David's arms, she felt young again, free again. What she didn't realize was that every secret meeting was pulling her further away from Sumit and closer to disaster. Jenny had carried her secret debt for years, even into her marriage with Sumit. She had been too afraid to tell him, worried that he would leave her. When she finally confessed the truth to David, she expected him to be shocked or even to reject her. But instead, he made a promise that changed everything. David listened carefully as Jenny explained the weight of her financial troubles. Her voice trembled as she admitted the amount, $500,000. Jenny braced herself for silence, for the awkward pause that usually came after a confession like that. But David didn't react the way she expected. "Jenny," he said firmly, "you don't have to worry about this anymore. I'll take care of it." The words felt like a miracle. Jenny blinked, unsure if she had heard him correctly. But David repeated himself, calm and steady, his eyes locked on hers. "I have the resources. I have the connections. You've suffered long enough. Let me handle this." For Jenny, it felt like the ground beneath her had shifted. Years of anxiety, sleepless nights, and fear seemed to melt away in that single moment. David wasn't just offering comfort, he was offering rescue. From that day forward, their relationship grew stronger in ways Jenny never imagined. Every time they met, David reminded her that the debt was no longer her burden. He spoke confidently about financial plans, people who could restructure her loans, and ways to erase the nightmare she had lived with for so long. Jenny began to see David not only as a lover, but as a partner in her survival. He wasn't just filling the emotional emptiness left by Sumit. He was rewriting her future. The promise of financial freedom tied them together more tightly than passion ever could. Jenny clung to David's words, repeating them in her mind whenever she started to doubt. She began to imagine a life without fear, a life where she could finally breathe again. But promises always come with consequences. By accepting David's help, Jenny was stepping deeper into a world of secrets and betrayal. She knew she could never tell Sumit the truth. Not about the debt and certainly not about David's role in fixing it. Still, she convinced herself it was worth it. After everything she had sacrificed to be with Sumit, didn't she deserve happiness and peace? David's promise wasn't just about money. It was about power, control, and the feeling of being rescued. For Jenny, it was a promise she couldn't resist, even if it meant destroying everything else in her path. The affair was no longer just a secret. It had become her lifeline, and she was holding on tightly. Once David promised to erase Jenny's crushing debt, their relationship entered a new phase. It was now filled not only with secrecy, but also with indulgence. What began as quiet conversations and stolen glances turned into nights of luxury Jenny never thought she would experience again. David spared no expense. He took her to five-star hotels hidden in the heart of Delhi, where chandeliers sparkled above marble floors and the scent of fresh roses filled the air. For Jenny, who had grown used to simple living with Sumit, these escapes felt like stepping into another world. In those hotel suites, she rediscovered a version of herself she thought was gone. She wore elegant dresses David bought for her, sipped champagne from crystal glasses, and enjoyed meals made by private chefs. The woman who once worried about every rupee was suddenly surrounded by abundance. But every night of luxury added another layer of lies. Jenny told Sumit she was visiting friends, running errands, or needed time alone. Sumit, trusting and unsuspecting, rarely questioned her. He believed their marriage, though strained, was still strong. He had no idea that while he waited at home, Jenny was wrapped in silk sheets beside another man. David, meanwhile, enjoyed being her provider. He told Jenny she deserved this life, that she had suffered enough, and that he could give her what Sumit never could. His words were powerful, and Jenny believed him. But underneath the glamour, guilt started to eat at her. Every time she returned home, she carried the scent of luxury on her clothes and the faint trace of David's cologne on her skin. She would smile at Sumit, cook dinner, and pretend everything was normal. But deep inside, she knew she was living a lie. The lies grew heavier each week. Jenny began practicing excuses, preparing stories to explain her absences. She told herself it was temporary, that once her debt was gone, she would find a way to fix her mistakes. But the truth was different. She wasn't just surviving anymore. She was addicted to the life David offered. Luxury had become her escape, and lies had become her way of living. What Jenny didn't realize was that every secret meeting, every night in luxury, was pulling her deeper into a trap she would never escape. The more she embraced David's world, the further she drifted from Sumit. And soon, the consequences of her choices would crash down in ways she could never imagine. The stage was set. The affair was no longer just a secret. It was a ticking time bomb. Jenny Sladen thought she had seen everything in her 60-plus years of life. Love, heartbreak, sacrifice, and judgment from the world. But nothing could prepare her for the moment she looked down at the small white stick in her hand. Its results screamed louder than any words could. She was pregnant. At first, Jenny laughed nervously, hardly believing it. How could this be possible? She was older, past the age when most women even thought about pregnancy. Yet the test was clear, and the symptoms she had ignored, fatigue, nausea, and sudden changes in her body, all made sense now. Her hands shook as she sat on the edge of the bed in the hotel room David had booked for them. The irony wasn't lost on her. The very place where she had given in to secrecy and passion had become the place where everything changed. When she told David, his reaction was immediate and calm. He didn't flinch or question it. He took her hand and said, "Jenny, this is our child. We'll face this together." His words comforted her and terrified her at the same time. Comforted because she didn't feel alone. Terrified because she knew what this meant for her marriage to Sumit. There was no way to hide a pregnancy forever. Once the truth came out, everything she had built on lies would fall apart. Still, part of her felt a strange hope. The thought of carrying David's child, a new life, a new beginning, filled her with emotion she hadn't felt in years. She imagined a future where she and David raised the baby together, free from debt, free from judgment, and free from the constant struggles that had defined her relationship with Sumit. But reality wasn't that simple. Jenny knew questions would come. How would she explain this to Sumit? How would she face his family, who had doubted her from the beginning? And what about the public, the fans who had followed her on 90 Day Fiancé? The scandal would be explosive. The secret became harder to hide with each passing day. Jenny avoided Sumit more and more, saying she was tired or sick when he asked why she was distant. In truth, she was hiding the storm growing inside her, both the baby and the truth that would soon destroy everything she knew. The pregnancy was no longer just a personal secret. It was a ticking clock. Every moment brought Jenny closer to the day when the truth could no longer be hidden. Jenny had crossed many lines before, but this was different. This wasn't just about love or betrayal. This was about life itself. Once the truth came out, nothing, her marriage, her reputation, or even her freedom, would ever be the same again. The pregnancy had already shaken Jenny's world, but the question of who the father was weighed on her like a stone. Even though her heart told her the answer, she needed proof. Doubts filled her mind each day, and she knew that sooner or later she would have to face the truth. Was the child David's, or could it possibly be Sumit's? Jenny tried to convince herself that it didn't matter, that she could simply move on with David and leave her old life behind. But deep down, she knew the truth always finds a way out. This secret was too big to hide forever. It was David who pushed for the test. "Jenny," he said firmly, "we need to know. not just for us, but for the baby. This isn't something we can leave to chance. Jenny reluctantly agreed. They went to a private clinic far from the neighborhood where she and Sumit lived, so no one would notice. The white walls, the quiet hum of machines, and the serious faces of the staff made Jenny even more nervous. She sat in the waiting room with her hands clenched, her mind racing through every possible outcome. The test was quick, a simple swab and a few samples, but the waiting was unbearable. Days felt like weeks. Jenny avoided Sumit more than ever, pretending to be sick while she secretly checked her phone every hour, waiting for news from the clinic. Finally, the results arrived. Jenny opened the envelope with shaking hands. Her heart pounded so loudly that she could barely hear David's voice beside her. The words were clear and final. The baby's DNA matched David's. Jenny's breath caught in her throat. She had known it deep down, but seeing it written in black and white made it real. There was no turning back now. The child she carried was not Sumit's. It was David's. David seemed relieved. He held her close and whispered, "This is our future. This is proof that we belong together." His confidence was comforting, and for a brief moment, Jenny believed in the dream he described, a new life, a new family, a new beginning. But reality was far more complicated. Jenny knew that once Sumit found out, their marriage would fall apart completely. His trust, already fragile, would be destroyed. And beyond their personal pain, there was the threat of a public scandal. Family, fans, and the media would all devour the story. The DNA test was more than science. It was a verdict. It confirmed that Jenny's secret life could not stay hidden any longer. As she folded the paper back into the envelope, Jenny realized her choices had led her to a point of no return. The truth existed now, and it was only a matter of time before it ruined everything she had once fought to protect. For Sumit Singh, life had always been a battle for love. He had fought his family, faced public judgment, and risked his reputation to be with Jenny Slatten. To him, their marriage proved that love could overcome anything. But when he learned the truth about Jenny's pregnancy, that belief was shattered instantly. It began with rumors. Friends noticed Jenny's absences, her excuses, her sudden secrecy. Sumit ignored them at first, believing she was just tired or unwell. But his unease grew when he found small clues, unfamiliar hotel receipts, strange phone calls late at night, and Jenny's cold, distant behavior. The breaking point came when Sumit finally confronted her. Jenny, cornered and exhausted from carrying so many lies, broke down and confessed. She told him about the pregnancy, about David, and about the DNA test that proved the baby wasn't his. The words hit Sumit like a physical blow. His chest tightened, his vision blurred, and for a moment he couldn't breathe. The woman he had defended against his parents, the woman he had chosen over tradition and culture, had betrayed him in the worst possible way. "Why, Jenny?" he asked, his voice shaking. "After everything we went through, why?" Jenny had no answer that could take away the pain. She tried to explain her financial problems, her desperation, and her need for security, but to Sumit, they sounded like excuses. The love he had believed in so deeply now felt like a cruel trick. In the days that followed, Sumit fell apart. He avoided friends and family, too ashamed to face their questions. He stopped eating, stopped sleeping, and spent hours sitting silently, staring at the walls. The man who had once fought the world for love now seemed empty and broken. Soon, his despair turned into anger. He replayed every lie in his mind, every time Jenny had chosen David over him. The betrayal consumed him. He became restless, shouting during arguments, his words full of pain and bitterness. Jenny, full of guilt and fear, could only endure his anger. But beneath the rage was something worse, hopelessness. Sumit began to doubt not just his marriage, but himself. Had he been a fool to believe in their love? Had it all meant nothing? The humiliation and heartbreak crushed him until he couldn't see a way out. Friends who visited him said he was unrecognizable. His eyes were empty, his laughter gone, his spirit destroyed. The betrayal hadn't just broken his heart, it had broken him completely. And as his days grew darker, Sumit's thoughts turned to something dangerous, escape. Not from Jenny, not from David, but from life itself. The collapse was complete. The man who once fought the world for love now stood at the edge of losing everything, including himself. The walls of Jenny and Sumit's marriage had already started to fall apart, but the DNA results were the final blow. For Sumit, the betrayal was unbearable. For Jenny, the truth was undeniable. For both of them, the future they had once built together was now in ruins. In the days after the truth came out, their home became a battlefield. They fought over small things, but beneath every word was the same reality. Their marriage was over. Sumit's voice